Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll start off with the 33% Byzantine fault tolerance threshold. So this has been confusing me a little bit, and I don't know how much you guys have looked into it, but for me, the issue is always like, what exactly are the assumptions that we're dealing with in our particular setup? So with the setup so this is coming from the Stack Exchange post. There was a link in Discord, but now I also shared a folder from my Google Drive, and it's got like all of these documents in it, and I wrote it up in LaTeX really nicely. So the argument is all there if you want to see it written up, and I'll show it at some point here. But the assumptions that they're going off of in that particular setup are that we have an asynchronous network, so we're not considering time whatsoever. We have the presence of malicious nodes, or at least we can have the presence of malicious nodes, and we're trying to guarantee two things. So we're trying to guarantee both consensus safety and also liveness. And so when we play the binary consensus, it's a little bit different because of what Joshi was just saying. We don't actually have liveness in the binary consensus because we're actually trying to come to a consensus like the bit is 0 or the bit is 1. We don't want the game to continue forever. And this is, you know, in stark contrast to the blockchain implementation, because we want to continue coming to consensus on blocks. We don't want to, you know, end the blockchain. So it's a little bit different for the binary consensus and for this situation that we'll talk about, but we'll talk about this situation anyways, and then continue talking about the binary consensus. All right, so obviously if anybody has questions at any point in time, just interrupt me and ask your question.
And Isaac, did you say all the assumptions now, or?
Sorry, what was that?
Did you say all the assumptions, or we have?
So the assumptions are the network is asynchronous. We have malicious nodes, so we will have Byzantine faults basically. We're trying to guarantee the two things, safety and liveness. So those are the 4 things.
And do we have deterministic consensus or non-deterministic? Because I found out in one paper that in asynchronous system, deterministic consensus protocol are impossible. Even in the simple case of only one failed stop process.
So what do you mean exactly by deterministic versus non-deterministic in this context?
Well, I'm not completely sure.
Okay.
This is like my question. What does it mean to have deterministic or non-deterministic? Did you choose non-deterministically who you want to send a next message, or? I'm really not sure. So that's my question.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, if somebody else knows the answer to that, that would be great.
This is Joshi. I don't know the answer to that. I haven't heard those terms, but I know that the last bit you said, like where we're deciding who sends the next message, we're actually not making any attempt to even make such a decision. Anyone's allowed to send a message anytime they feel like. So there's no like waiting for your turn, and there's no, you know, I can rapid fire them as much as I want, or I can think like, all right, I'm going to wait until I hear what other people say a little bit and then send a message. And I don't think there's any restrictions or requirements on when you send messages.
Right.
On the other hand, is it some kind of restriction what message from who you receive the messages? Because if you receive messages all the time from the same 1/3 2/3, is this deterministic? Maybe it's not deterministic if you want to try receive messages from different actors, but not always from the same 2/3. So
yeah, so
because this 1/3 is always if you want to have 1/3 guarantee, you must have like a firewall assumption also. So you can split this 2/3 in 2 groups.
Mm-hmm. So as far as I know, again, there's no assumption on who you're receiving messages from. You're receiving messages from everybody, presumably. That was my understanding of this particular setup, at least.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Yep.
I think one thing that is worth pointing out there, because this is not like an inability to receive a message or something, but like if I have an agenda here and for whatever reason I'm trying to like push us all to agree on one, and maybe I received this message from Tomislav that is indicating he wants to go to 0, or his estimate is 0. I've received that now, but no one else knows that I've received it. And so I don't have to acknowledge it. Like I don't have to ever use it in a justification or tell anyone I've received it. And so I can do like my little part to try to censor that message. So there's no way for you to know. I mean, if a validator tells everyone, yes, I've received a message, then with cryptographic certainty that that's true. But if they don't say that they've received it, you have no idea whether they're lying or not. I don't think there's anything we can do about that.
Yeah, so what it sounds like is basically once you've acknowledged the receipt of a message, you can't ever go back on that acknowledgement of your receipt. However, nobody else ever knows that you've received a message unless you acknowledge it. That's my understanding of the setup here.
But is it also true that if you send the message next time, which implies that you knew this before, so you're lying?
So what do you mean by next time and knew it before? Because I mean, this is where the asynchrony comes in, right? You could have gotten that message at any point in time. So how does one prove that you had this message before the last one you sent? I think if I understand your question correctly.
Yeah, my question is also, do we have this history of who sent message to whom? Do we have this in the history? Is this what Vlad is specifying in the paper?
You have a local view of that, Tomislav. You have a set of information that So maybe like I sent a message to Isaac, and then Isaac sent a message to you. And if his message to you included the fact that he received one from me, then you know all of that in your local view. But maybe other messages are flying around too that you don't know about. And so everybody who's playing the game has their own local view of what's happened. And then I think the goal is that if all the validators look back in their history, whatever time is appropriate, like on the actual internet today, maybe like 20 minutes is appropriate or something, then we should have basically the same view of what's happened because we're all gossiping these messages around. But if we look at really recent stuff, like the last 4 or 5 messages I've seen, maybe you haven't seen those or vice versa. And so eventually, as the gossip comes and goes, we all kind of can come to agreement on who's seen what. I think that's my understanding.
Okay, cool. Any more questions before we go on to the 33% threshold argument? It's not a rigorous argument, but at least it'll give us, kind of the idea as to what the rigorous argument is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the paper that contains the rigorous argument, I know we've put it into the Discord chat. It's also in that drive folder. If you don't have the link for the drive folder, I'll send that out again. Yeah, but either way, let's go to this argument. I guess I'll show the paper, or at least, my type up of it. That's let's see, here it is.
Look good.
Yeah, so this is the post that David Schwartz put up on Stack Exchange in response to someone's question about why is it, this 33% threshold. So he just kind of motivates it a little bit. Here's the rigorous proof is in this asynchronous consensus and broadcast protocols paper. So he kind of motivates it with an example that's akin to the Bitcoin blockchain, and he's talking about ordering checks, but that's not super important for what we're doing right now. But here are the 4 requirements that I was saying that we have in this particular example. So it deviates a little bit from the binary consensus, but it should be more in line with the blockchain consensus for Casper. So like we were saying, our system is asynchronous, right? So no notion of time. Some of the participants may be malicious, and we want this notion of safety, which is basically just that all of the honest nodes should agree on the same past. So there shouldn't be a way for honest nodes to come to 2 different inconsistent conclusions about what has happened or the messages that have been passed. So for example, in the binary consensus, it shouldn't be the case that we can ever get to a state where all honest nodes are saying the bit is 0 and also saying the bit is 1 and sure that bit will never change from their local view. And then our 4th assumption is this liveness assumption. And so like I was saying, this doesn't apply to the binary consensus, it applies to the blockchain setting. But this is essentially just saying that we'll always be able to agree on something else.
And when you say they will never change consensus they made one time. So is this how they know when the consensus is finalized? It's not related to time, right? It's related to number of messages or.
Right. So when I say that their decision on the bit won't change, so I'm saying when in their local view, they see that more than half of the weight is saying that, the bit is 0, for example, then that should never change from their local view. At least that's how I'm understanding it. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Yeah, this is the question. And then, do we have any guarantee when this will happen, or do we know if this will happen ever?
Right. Yeah. So does somebody have a response to that? Because I'm not 100% sure how we know that all of the honest nodes have come to consensus, or even if we know that all of the honest nodes come to consensus. I don't think there's a way for us to tell.
No, there totally is. If okay. So we say we talk about estimate safety. So my local view, if I'm a validator or a player in this game, I know that I've reached safety when I've seen more than half of the weight of the validators estimating the same thing that I am, right? So then here's how, so let's say, Isaac, I've reached that safety, but you haven't. So what I do now is I send out my next block, my next message, and in that block I contain justifications of all these people who have, this more than half the weight that's given me safety. And as soon as you see my block, you've therefore seen everything that I'm saying I knew in order to reach safety. And so now you've reached safety too.
Right. Okay.
So I don't know that you've reached, so you know that I've reached safety now. I don't yet know that you've reached safety, but when you send out another block, if I've received that one back, now I know that you've reached safety as well.
Right.
Joshi, can you explain what does it mean to have justification if this is not too off the track?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's totally on track. That's a really important part of Casper. So let's first consider without justification. That would be like, if all the messages we're sending are just like, hey, it's Joshi, I think the bit is 1. And then you send, hey, it's Tomislav, I think the bit is 1. And then Jeremy sends, hey, it's me, I think the bit is 1. So that's no justifications right there. And that makes equivocating or like, telling somebody one thing and somebody different, a different thing. It's totally easy when you don't have justifications. So justifications are including other people's messages in my own messages. So if, let's see, who else is on this call? If Rita sends me a message that says, I think the bit is 1, now my next message is going to be, hey, it's Joshy. I think the bit is 1, and here's this message that I got from Rita that makes me think that. So the forwarding her message along with mine is a justification for why I believe what I believe.
And I suppose order is important because you want to know who sent to who. This is the way how you conclude locally on justification, or
yeah, so we have no global ordering to the messages, right? But there's some sort of, I guess there's some sort of local local ordering, because you have justifications from all of the messages that you've seen. But like we were talking about before, there may be messages out there that you just haven't seen yet, that could have been inserted at any point in time, really, in this order that you do have access to. Okay, does that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, great. All right, so to continue with this setup, yeah, so there is no notion of justifications in this setup. Once you have the notion of justifications, we have maybe a little bit better situation, especially in the binary consensus, since we don't need liveness. We really can have as many Byzantine faults as you possibly want. But in this particular setup, no notion of justification. So it's like you're just hearing like, hey, it's Isaac, I think the bit is 1. And, Jeremy sends in, he says, hey, this is Jeremy, I think the bit is 0. And that's all you're hearing. You're not hearing any of the things that they have seen from other people. So no justifications here. So basically, the idea is we're going to partition all of the nodes into the honest nodes and the dishonest nodes. The dishonest nodes are essentially just the Byzantine faulty nodes. So we get, of course, that the total number of nodes is just the honest nodes plus the dishonest nodes. That's fine. And so we're trying to think of the worst possible case in terms of safety now. So like we said, safety is we don't want honest nodes to think that the consensus is that the bit is 1, and also have honest nodes that think the consensus is that the bit is 0, because clearly this would be inconsistent for the purposes of coming to consensus on a bit. So what we're saying here is the worst possible case is that half of the honest nodes are thinking the bit is 0, half of the honest nodes are thinking the bit is 1. And basically what can happen here is, in the presence of dishonest nodes, if we have equivocations are possible, since we're not including justifications with our messages, then all of these dishonest nodes can just tell the bit 0 team that they also think that the bit is 0, and then they can also go over to the bit 1 team and just tell them that they think the bit is 1 as well. So in that case, what we actually have is that all of the honest nodes are thinking that, well, okay, half of us were saying that the bit was 0, and now there's also these dishonest nodes that are telling us that the bit is 0. So they all think that there's H over 2 plus D agreeing with their particular view. So in this case, what was that?
Honest and how many honest and how many dishonest nodes we have?
So right now there's no restriction on either number. So we're just trying to figure out what is the maximum number of dishonest nodes that we can have in this sort of setup.
Okay. So, sorry, one second. No, never mind. Keep going.
Okay. All right. Cool. So in this case, right? So if we have an even split between the honest nodes, and the dishonest nodes are allowed to tell each of those groups that they agree with them, then each of those groups are thinking that they have a consensus on their particular bit. So this would ruin safety in this particular case. And so essentially, what we're going to do is just call this threshold for how many nodes are required to ensure safety. We're going to call that number T. So that's where this T is coming from, right? So this is just the number of nodes that we need to have safety here. So what we're saying is that, so hold on a second, I lost myself. Okay, so then in this particular case, if we need to have consensus, right, we need to know that we have more than this number h over 2 plus d nodes for agreeing on one bit for safety. Does that make sense? For some reason, I'm not seeing it right this second.
So we've got n total nodes, and h of them are honest and d of them are dishonest. So the very first equation near the top right of your screen is n equals h plus d. That's definitely correct.
Yeah.
So you say, so in that next paragraph, you say the malicious nodes could tell all the honest nodes that they agree with them. That would give h over 2 plus d nodes agree. Okay, right. So if I'm an honest node that's on the 0 team, and half of the honest nodes are on the 0 team, so that means that all of my team, which is half the honest nodes, plus all of the dishonest nodes are agreeing with each other. So that totally makes sense too.
Yeah. And same thing with the bit 1 team, right? They think exactly the same thing. They're like, we have h over 2 nodes that were agreeing before. We just got d more nodes on our side. Like we're doing all right.
And but this d also have ability to really split this h in two groups and prevent communicating between these two groups. It's like for me, this is like a big assumption.
They don't. No. They don't have to prevent communicating between the two groups. If we say like maybe Tomislav, you and I are honest and we're on team 0, and then like Jake and Jeremy are honest and they're on team 1, and Isaac is the dishonest one. So he tells us both 0, and he tells Jake and Jeremy both 1. Like, yeah, I can call up Jeremy and be like, yo, dude, it's 0. Me and Isaac and Tomislav all agree. And Jeremy will be like, no, it's 1. Me and Jake and Isaac all agree. And since we don't have justifications, we don't have any way, like, I don't know whether Isaac was lying. I don't know whether Jeremy's lying. I don't know what the problem is. The only thing I know is that I've seen 3 out of 5 people say 0, and that's all I need.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you're receiving only messages from 2 sides, right? If we are the group of 3, so okay.
Yeah, so like that's you bring up a good point though. Like once I've seen that conflicting information, so like without the justifications, I don't know who's lying, but I at least know that something fishy is going on, and maybe I should reconsider whether I really have safety, I guess.
I think you should reconsider your protocol, but that's just me. I don't know. All right. So either way though, right? So we got this situation where, h over 2 plus d of the nodes think the bit is 0, h over 2 plus d of the nodes think the bit is 1. And basically what we're saying here, the restriction is coming from the fact that if we proceed in that case, right? So if we, so we will lose safety unless we have more nodes than this h over 2 plus d agreeing on one side or the other. Because in this particular situation, it's an even split between 0 and 1. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's where we're getting this inequality here. So the number of nodes required to agree on a particular bit, we need that to be strictly greater than this h over 2 plus d, because we just showed a situation where it was equally split between h over 2 plus d on 0 and h over 2 plus d on 1. And that's not okay because we don't have safety in that particular case. Okay, so the next situation is for the liveness insurance. And so basically the argument goes, these malicious nodes could just fail to agree completely. So if we don't have any malicious nodes kind of contributing to the conversation, well, then we need this threshold to ensure that we have liveness to be less than, at least less than or equal to H, or really at most H, right? So this is where we're getting this inequality, this T is less than or equal to H, right? Because basically what we're saying is, we know that these H nodes are going to agree on something at some point because they're actually following the protocol, whereas these dishonest nodes are not following the protocol. So they can just kind of abstain from the vote. So to ensure that we can continue to agree on things, ensure liveness, we're going to need that threshold to guarantee liveness to be less than or equal to H, because this is the worst possible case scenario where they're the only ones contributing to the conversation.
You're saying the honest ones are the only ones contributing?
Yeah, exactly. So the malicious nodes are just like, silent, for example.
Okay, yeah, this requirement makes way more sense, right? If we're saying we need at least half of the weight to agree in order to consider it safe, and if now the dishonest ones are just not saying anything, like then obviously we need more than half of the people to be talking in order for more than half the people to be saying the same thing.
Yeah, right. And so so remember this T is just like we're trying to solve for it essentially, and basically it's just the number of nodes that are required to ensure liveness in this particular scenario. But we're trying to combine these two things. So we just found that the number of nodes required to ensure safety, we said, was the half of the honest nodes plus the number of dishonest nodes. And then in this case, the number of nodes required to ensure liveness is just less than or equal to the number of honest nodes, because the dishonest nodes can just basically abstain from the vote. And so then combining these two inequalities, we have our kind of chain of implications here. Basically, we just show fairly easily that the number of dishonest nodes can't be greater than or equal to the number of honest nodes divided by 2. And so this is what gives us this 1/3 tolerance threshold. And so it really comes down to both of these guarantees of safety and liveness for this 1/3 threshold.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody cool with that?
Yeah, I think.
Cool. So and so, like I said, this document is in that Google Drive folder, which I'll just share the link for after we get off of this call. All right, cool. So I'm gonna get this document off of my screen, and let's see. Stop sharing. Okay, cool. All right, so that's the argument for that very particular setup, right? But we've mentioned a few times that the setup for the binary consensus that we talked about last time is a little bit different because we don't have this liveness requirement. Well, that's annoying. Okay. So should we play a game of the binary consensus, or should we go ahead and start looking at the paper and just reading through it?
I'm for the game.
You're for the game?
Yeah,
all right.
Because we've got some people.
I think Josh is for the game.
Yeah, I always prefer the game. You know that. But.
All right. Cool. All right. So yeah, let's go ahead and play a round of binary consensus then. So let's see. I need to share my screen again. All right, cool. So let's say we got Alice. Can you guys see this, or should I make it a little bigger? Make Alice red. All right, make it a little bigger. All right, so we got Alice. Let's say Alice has a weight of 4, because why not? Okay, we have, let's go with Bob. And Bob's gonna have a weight of 3. And we have Carol. And Carol will also have a weight of 3, because why not? All right, so we got 3 players. So those are their weights: 4 for Alice, 3 for Bob, 3 for Carol. And so we're gonna go ahead and just start proposing some bits for each of them. So let's say, for example, Carol is gonna propose a bit of 1. Let's say without seeing that bit, Bob is gonna propose a bit of 0. And without seeing any of those, Alice will propose a bit of 0 as well. Okay. So from this, basically anything can happen. So let's just say Alice, again, doesn't see anything and just says, well, I know my estimate was 0 here because that was my original estimate. I have weight 4. Well, that's all of the weight that I see, so it must still be 0. And let's go ahead and draw the justification between those. So Alice has seen only the 0 bit that she proposed, and so she's still proposing a 0 bit. Okay. So let's say Carol is the one to go next, and Carol sees Alice's bit of 0 and also Bob's bit of 0. And so if she sees Bob's bit of 0 and Alice's bit of 0, well, then that's 4 plus 3, 7 weight for 0, 3 weight for 1. So she's going to go ahead and say, all right, well, that's 0. So this is coming from that 1 from Carol, the 3 from Bob, and the 4 from Alice. So now, because we can see all of these validators at the same time in every single message that they've ever sent, we know that they're at 0. And I guess actually Carol also knows that everybody is saying 0. But currently Alice has no idea what Bob or Carol is saying. And also Bob has no idea what either Alice or Carol is saying. So let's say Bob goes next, and Bob sees Alice's bit of 0 and also Carol's bit of 0, also his own bit of 0. So he says, okay, of course it has to be 0. I saw mine, I saw Alice's, and I saw Carol's. Okay, so now Bob is also in the loop. He knows everybody is saying 0. And so I guess we could have several more messages here.
Can I nuance here real quick?
Yeah,
Carol,
sure.
Carol has reached estimate safety on 0. She knows that more than half of the people are saying 0.
Right, exactly.
She doesn't know that anyone else has reached estimate safety other than himself. Bob actually has more information than that. Bob knows Bob is at estimate safety just like Carol is, but Bob also knows that Carol has reached estimate safety because he's cited her most recent message in his justification there.
Right.
So Bob has the most information of anybody, right? Well, in fact, Bob has seen everything that we've seen at this point.
True, right. He's seen everybody say 0 and also he's seen every message. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, perfect. Thank you for that. And so let's say Alice goes next. Maybe Alice only sees Bob's message, but even still, there's weight 7 on 0. And so that's what she's going to go with because she doesn't see any weight on 1. And so say Alice saw her own message and also Bob's message. Okay. But it looks like we're even in a similar situation as Bob was now with Alice, because Alice has seen Bob's latest message, which had access to every other message. So Alice now also has all of this information.
Yeah. So the only person is not totally done here is Carol, because while Carol's reached estimate safety herself, she doesn't know that her co-players have reached estimate safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Because
she can be sure that that 2/3 have 0, right?
Can you say that again?
She knows that Bob and Alice have 0s.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like 2/3.
She doesn't know that Bob has a safe 0, though. She definitely has safety herself, but she doesn't know that Bob has safety.
Right, because Bob's 0 here was just from like an empty justification, basically.
Ah, okay. See.
Yeah, so I guess if we want to play one more bit, Carol can go ahead and play one, and maybe she just sees Bob in her own. Write something, I guess. And so maybe she sees Bob's in her own. And so now at this point, does Carol know about the estimate safety for everybody else?
Yeah, definitely. Right.
Yeah. So Carol definitely had estimate safety here.
Here.
Bob.
Actually, I don't even know if that's true. Because, oh yeah, sorry. You're right.
You were saying about the estimate safety here for Carol?
Yeah, it's good though. She does.
Okay. And it looks
on the second message, Joshi, can you explain this? You said that message from Bob is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you say your question again?
So you said that on the second step, when Carol only have message from Bob and from Alice, but these messages are without justification.
She knows, yeah. So you're saying the Carol message that Isaac circled, her second message?
Yep.
So she has seen Bob say 0, but she doesn't know. Yeah, okay, this is a good question. I think Carol has estimate safety there because, well, what's the definition of estimate safety, actually? Now I'm questioning even the basics. I think estimate safety means more than half. She has seen more than half the validators on their most recent messages estimating 0, right?
correct. Yeah. So the terminology that Vlad uses in his paper is that the score of this particular estimate for all of the messages that Carol has seen up until this point is greater than 1/2 of the total score.
Here's what I'm struggling with, though. Still looking at the same message that you've said Carol only knows her estimate is safe. Bob could, at any point, as far as Carol knows, Bob could still change his mind, right? Bob's next block could be a 1 block.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because if Bob, so Carol has only seen Bob's very first message, that 0, that blue 0 all the way up at the top, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
is that better?
So what if Bob's next message, you drew it one way, but I'm just saying hypothetically, what if Bob's next block, he had seen his own 0 and he had seen Carol's 1 and he decided to make, oh, here we go.
Yeah. We need to dig in here a little bit. It seems like
so you're doing a great job.
Hey, real quick, Isaac, I got to bounce, so I'm about to make you the host and roll out. All right?
Okay. All right. That sounds good. Do you think the recording will stop if you do that?
I don't think so. I think it should keep going once I make you the host.
All right. Cool. Sounds good. All right. So let's change that to a 1. Okay. Yeah, it looks like everything's still good. All right. So let's change that to a 1. Yeah, I think I agree with you, Joshy. Let's figure this out, right? So okay, so well, okay, but he couldn't have seen Alice's at that point, right? Because that would have been majority weight for 0.
I guess what could have happened is that Alice sends 1 because she has seen Carol's message of 1 in between, so that Bob changes his mind to 1 because then it is because of the fork choice rule. We would take that as the current leading score, and then he would change his mind to 1, and Carol does not know about that. So that's what could have happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I understand correctly, you're saying that Bob maybe just saw Carol's original message.
That's the only way he would be allowed to change his estimate to 1.
Right, exactly. So
Wait.
Bob sees this one.
Wait, I have a question. Does everyone know how many, like, what's the total weight? Right?
So yeah. So everybody knows each weight and then of course the total weight. Yeah.
So I don't think Bob or Alice will change their minds because they don't have enough weight to change their mind. Okay?
Yeah.
There is no justification to the others. So Alice and Bob, they haven't put a justification forward so that you are sure that they've seen their messages.
No,
So,
yeah, but I'm saying if Bob only sees Carol, right? So Bob sees Carol's 1, and you're saying, oh, he might change his mind to 1. But I don't think he will because he needs enough weight to change his mind.
That's why I said what Alice could have done is because she might have seen Carol's 1. She might. Oh no, that's not possible.
Even as it's drawn right now, it's a valid graph, because when we look at that second Bob block where Isaac's drawn it in as 1, the score that Bob sees there is there were 3 votes for 0 that came from Bob, and there were 3 votes from Carol that came from 1. That's a tied vote, and in that situation, the validator is allowed to. Really.
Is it allowed to change if the score is the same as before?
Isaac, I'm going to pull up Vlad's paper. I think that is acceptable.
I don't think they change. I think they kind of just abstain from saying another bit. Let me put the paper up there. Okay. Yeah, so we're talking about this part here with the binary estimator.
Right. So there's the estimator.
Right.
So if the score for 0 is greater than the score for 1, you have to estimate 0. If the score for 1 is greater than the score for 0, you have to estimate 1. Equation 4 is the case we're interested in here, where the scores are tied. And so then the estimator returns nothing. It returns nil. But if you scroll back up higher, valid blocks have to have an estimate. And I think when the estimator returns nil, you get to choose the estimate.
Sorry, Philip, can you mute when you don't speak because you have background noise?
Oh.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, man. Where's the... Somewhere there were... He was talking about valid blocks.
Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah, a vertical message M is valid if either the estimate of the justification of what the validator's seen is nil, or
so the scores are equal.
What the estimator was.
Yeah. So in this is the case that we're in right now.
Yeah, where the estimator returned nil.
Yeah. Right.
Because it was a tied vote. So that I think that means the validator gets to choose, right? The block is valid if the estimator was nil, and the estimator's nil, so Bob's block is valid.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. Oh, right. So you're saying that this is okay because the estimator didn't force him to say a 0 or a 1, so he's just allowed to choose? Okay.
That's how I take that paper. What did you think about that?
So I thought only if someone gets enough weight to change his mind, it will change his mind.
Like
Right.
more than half, you mean? Not equal, like equal to half was not okay.
I thought it was more than half, but I'm not sure if that's right though. That was just me making an assumption.
Yeah, and I think the assumption that I was making
before you see safety.
Sorry, what was that?
You can change your mind before you see safety if just like the weight is like overweighing what you've seen already, and you've only seen like partial weights. You don't need, it doesn't need to be over 51% of like the total weight ever. Is that what you're asking? You can change your mind before you see safety.
Yeah, totally. That I agree with you there too. And so then now we're in an even more nuanced subset of that, which is when it's exactly tied, when you've seen the score for 0 is equal to the score for 1.
And do you include the Carol message that says 1? Because how can you say that you have justification to change your mind? You must include in message for 1. Is this true?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, the only way Bob is changing this initial 0 bit to a 1 bit here is if he sees this bit 1 from Carol, and we're also allowed to change our mind if the score is exactly equal for 0s and 1s.
I believe
so Bob sends another message.
Interpretation of the paper there.
Yeah.
So Bob sends another message with included 0 and 1.
Say that again.
Bob sends another message which includes 0 and 1.
Which 0 and which 1?
So this
the first 0, because Bob sent the first message with 0 to Carol, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't send 2 messages with the same justification structure underneath it. That's with different results. That's equivocation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's true. We should draw that in though, because I think that's illustrative.
So if you say Carol is 4, then definitely Bob will change his mind, right? So like
right, yeah.
So if we say Carol is 4, then we can kind of continue and get to the same problem we were like. It's not a problem. We're like same situation we tried to get to, right?
Yeah, and I don't think that changes all that much about this. All right, so let's go ahead and say that, and then even in the case of equality and we can change our mind, I mean, we would be in this exact same graph. But if we just change that weight to 4, then I think we're okay there.
So should we draw in like what it would look like for Bob to equivocate and explain why that's an equivocation?
Oh, yeah. So let's see. So for Bob to equivocate, yeah, maybe he just pretends like he doesn't see his original bit.
Oh, that's a good one, yeah.
Would be an equivocation. Right, so Bob already sent out a bit of 0, and then sometime later on sends out a bit of 1 without acknowledging his original bit of 0. That would be an equivocation.
How do you mean without acknowledging?
So in this bit of 1, this bit of 0 is not included in the justification. Right, and so we're illustrating that graphically by not drawing a line between these 2 bits.
But you said that this is not the same, like the same block or the same consensus, because this is consensus about 1. So,
well, okay, so just to be really clear, right? An equivocation is when one validator, so in this case Bob, sends out 2 different messages, and neither is in the justification of the other. So in this 1 message, he didn't acknowledge this 0 message, and in the 0 message, he didn't acknowledge this 1 message.
This would be an example of like trying to tell maybe he's trying to tell Carol 0 and he's trying to tell Alice 1. Maybe the second message he only sends over to Alice. And since he didn't acknowledge the first message, now he's equivocating.
But is it possible that this first message didn't arrive yet?
Oh, it's totally possible. So no one can prove that Bob has equivocated until they've seen both of those. But he has, even if it's not proven yet.
Right. Yeah, we can only tell because we have like this God's eye view and we see everything that's happening in this network. But Alice and Carol don't know yet that Bob has equivocated. We'd have to play a little longer to see that.
Oh yeah, that would be fun.
Okay, yeah, let's keep going then. So maybe let's say Alice goes next, and let's say that Alice sees only this one from Carol here and this one from Bob, right? Just to make it so that she changes her mind. So Alice includes that justification, doesn't want to equivocate, saw Bob's 1 and likewise saw Carol's 1 because that was included in Bob's justification. Okay. Oh, go away. All right, and so now let's see, maybe Carol sees only her 0 and Bob's 1, for example. And so still says 0.
But now Carol can slash Bob because she's seen both of his blocks.
Yeah, and now Carol, right, exactly. And now Carol has seen Bob's 1 and Bob's 0 without a justification between them. And so she knows that she can slash Bob at this point. So she would essentially just send out this bit of 0 and then say, hey, by the way, everybody else in the network, Bob's an equivocator, slash him. And so Alice doesn't know yet that Bob's an equivocator, but the second that she sees this message from Carol, she will know, right? So we can go ahead and just do that and see that. And so I'm actually a little unsure as to what happens in this case once they know Bob needs to be slashed. What happens to the graph and all of the messages that Bob sent out?
His weight is just reduced to 0.
His weight's reduced to 0. It gets apportioned to them in some way. So we can say maybe like Carol gets 2 and Alice gets 1, for example.
No, just the total weight gets is now 7 or whatever.
Okay, and he just goes away completely.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean it depends on like what you're actually doing in your like consensus protocol, right? You incentivize slashing by, I think, like giving small rewards. But yeah, no, but that doesn't actually change the staked amount. So yeah, I think it just goes away.
Right, but the effect will be the same, right? Even if you slice it to everyone or not, or remove it.
Right.
That's in this case that's true because Carol and Alice both started with the same weight.
Right.
Okay.
But I think so. This is a little bit tangential, but I think in the RChain context, I think the stake gets split up among the remaining validators, with the bonus going to whoever reported the slashing.
Yeah, I want to say that there's even some parameter that the person who first finds the equivocator gets some specified amount, and then the rest of it gets split up between all of the rest of the validators.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's not specified for binary consensus.
Yeah, right.
Good point.
Also, it's not important for the consensus, right? It's more like the game theory to incentivize people.
Yeah.
To act, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
And this can be different in different namespaces, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think the specific shard or whatever is going to contain all of those rules. Okay. But either way, now at this point, Alice is saying 1 and Carol is saying 0. So how does this get resolved at this point now? Because half of the weight goes 1 and half of the weight goes 0.
Oh, I think they just have to play on.
I have a question. I might have missed it, but is the slash Bob, is that a justification or is just a pointer to slashing Bob? The line towards the 1. Because if it's a justification, then it's also an equivocation to use that as the justification.
I think the line, the diagonal line that goes from Bob's 1 to Carol's most recent 0 is a justification. You're saying that means Carol has now equivocated?
Yes, I think so.
Why do you think that?
No, because Carol. Well, yeah, actually, Carol's seen. I'm not sure. But if Carol has seen both messages,
if Carol is able to, sorry, if Carol is able to slash Bob, and she also is putting his block, which is slashable, as her justification, then that in itself is a justification.
I'm not getting you, Phil. I think the only thing you can be slashed for is equivocating, and equivocating means sending 2 messages, and neither one of them is in the justification of the other. I don't think Carol has done that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I think what Phil is saying is because Carol is taking this 1 into her justification and this 0 into her justification, that she's also equivocating. But I don't think that's the case.
That's a good point. Okay. So maybe yeah, we don't want that 1 that Bob voted. Carol shouldn't use that 1 to affect her new estimate, I guess. Is that what you're saying, Phil?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. So maybe we just need some new notation. Like, Carol definitely needs to communicate that she's seen both of those blocks of Bob's in order to slash him. But yeah, maybe it doesn't affect her estimate then.
Yeah, I mean, the idea, right, is that once she has seen Bob equivocate, those messages are still in her justification, but it's actually justification for why Bob's weight is 0 in her protocol.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So the interesting question then is, like, when Carol's calculating the estimate for that block at the bottom that says slash Bob, what is she shouldn't use any of Bob's previous messages, or what?
No, she has to use both of Bob's equivocating messages to like say that slashing Bob in her next message is like a valid thing, or that Bob's message is now
agree with that.
Okay, hold on. Let me redraw it a little bit, and then you guys can tell me if it's okay. So maybe this is like just a completely separate block now. You know what? Let's just get rid of this because this doesn't really matter. So this slash Bob is just like the next thing that happens. And the justification for that is from that 0 and from that 1, right?
Yeah, the 0 was already included indirectly. But I think
I guess that's true. Maybe I can even just get rid of that then.
In order for this to be a valid block, I think it needs to include an estimate, though, right? It needs to include a 0 or 1.
All right. Well, we can just include the 0 as well then.
Yeah, but then the question is, how does Carol calculate her estimate? How does she calculate the scores? Does she count Bob's 1? Does she count Bob's 0? Does she count neither of those?
Yeah, I think what we're saying is neither, because now once she knows Bob needs to be slashed, his weight goes to 0.
Got it. Okay, so she calculates her score as Carol said 0 with 4 and Alice said 0 with weight 4. So easy choice. She's going to estimate 0. Cool.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I guess this one here didn't factor into the estimate for 0. It was just the fact that Carol most recently said 0 and Alice also most recently said 0 from Carol's point of view.
Cool.
Okay. It is a little bit after 1 right now. So I guess here let's maybe just do one more message to Alice so she sees that Bob needs to be slashed. But yeah, I guess this is the issue, right? Is now half of the weight saying 1, half of the weight is saying 0. So I'm not 100% sure how the rest of this game plays out. But I guess Alice can just choose whatever she wants at this point, and then same with Carol, right? So then, okay, here I have a question then. So this 1 and the 0 now. Of course, of course, Alice used Bob's most recent, message of 1 in the justification of her message because she didn't know that Bob had equivocated at that point. But once she sees this, slash Bob message from Carol, does she then go back and recalculate this estimate, or it just stays?
Yeah, she has to update the estimate based on the new message she has received in her justification, in Carol's justification, which is Bob's other message 0, which she didn't originally receive.
Okay. So then what should I put here for the, so let's say she sees the slash Bob message, right, just to make it interesting. She, of course, knows her own message, and she sees the slash Bob and 0 coming from Carol. So what should I write here for Alice's next estimate?
It's going to be a 0.
It's going to be a 0. And I guess also, slash Bob. Okay, and so why is this one 0? It's 0 because, of course, she saw the 0 coming from here, saw the 1 coming from herself.
Why did she change her estimate to a 1 there? Because she saw the 1 from Bob, right?
Yeah. So this was before she knew Bob had equivocated. She just saw, hey, Bob sent out a 1, and but you know what? The
Carol's 1 is a justification. Yeah.
Yeah, these weights don't really work out now the way we have them set. So, but maybe let me change.
No, they do. They do because the one Bob's 1 contained inside of it. Bob's 1 actually had a weight of 7.
Oh yeah, right. Because Carol also had a 1 there.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
But now what she sees is she sees that Bob's weight actually doesn't hold anymore, right? So she has to recalculate, like saying that Bob's weight is 0.
Yeah.
And so Carol right now is safe on this. Wait, no, is not safe on the slash Bob, right? Yeah. She's not.
But Carol is in the same situation as Alice.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
So I think just because it's 50-50, right? So.
No, because it's not just 50-50, right? Because Carol at this point sees, she sees that Alice like previously.
You're talking about this one.
The previous message that she had from Alice that like doesn't have any equivocations inside of it, right? Because she knows that like that other. Yeah, so she's able to confidently say, I think at this point, that she has seen the total weight of the tree, right? She's seen a total weight of 8 now.
Mm-hmm.
And for her slash Bob message, which is 100% of the weight of the network, points towards 0.
Yeah, here. Okay, so then basically this message, because it's coming from this justification, is, you know, Alice is almost going to have to ignore or something?
Yeah, so once Alice receives the new information that so once her protocol state contains both the 0 message from Bob and the 1 message from Bob, her
Yeah.
estimate has to change to reflect that,
Okay.
and giving Bob 0 weight.
Yeah, that sounds good.
But Bob can also, like Bob choice can change the final result. Which
No,
is
yeah,
strange.
the final result cannot be 1 at this point.
But if Bob was said 1 the first time, then Carol will have 1.
Yeah, you're right.
So my question is, if Carol can go back and change that 0 in the second step and keep it as 1 or not? That's
Yes.
what I'm not. Yes. So it should be 50-50 then, right? Like.
Yeah, you're right. She could say either 0 or 1 at this point with a / Bob, but she sent out a 0.
Oh, right, because the only justification she can use are this 0 message from Alice and her own 1 message, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So it all depends on implementation, which most likely will just keep the 1, right? That's probably the.
Yeah. Right. Like, why would you change if, you know, you already said it was 1? Seems like you would just keep it as 1.
And we've split the network in 2 at this point, right? So there's like no 51% consensus. It's either like
Right.
either 50-50, a 50-50 split, or they both agree.
Yeah. This example got way more interesting than I was expecting it to.
Yeah, and if Carol gets some weights from Bob, then you have an incentive to have like a faulty nodes that can drive you in the direction that you want. I'm wondering if this is possible.
Well, but you'd have to put up the bond for those faulty validator nodes, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, but if you can change 1 result, maybe the whole bond is like a like a small bet.
Yeah, I don't know. All right. Should we call it here? It's a little after 1. I mean, I guess maybe we should think about this particular game and how it played out, and try to start with that next time.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how we can represent time here.
So time is going down. That's basically all we can say. So maybe I'll go ahead and put I don't know, gray. Green is better. Green time going down. All right, I'll post this into the. I guess not everybody here is in the Casper study group chat, but we'll try to add everybody to that, and I'll just post it into the CBC Casper thread on the RChain Discord channel. All right. Hey, thanks for coming, everybody. I think we'll just start with this particular game next time then, and try to figure out what should actually happen here.
Oh, great.
All right, cool. All right, see you later, everybody.
Cool.
See you. Bye-bye.